You shouldn't feel guilty about saying no. Winning financially is an intentional act. It is not an accidental one. There's only so much you can do when it comes to cutting down your budget. Hello, it's Kyle, and welcome back to another episode 12 if I recall. And today we've got 3 topics to talk about, and one of them is going to be talking about family and friends and how to interact with them financially speaking. Another one that we're going to be talking about today is winning isn't accidental, and Dave Ramsey is the inspiration of that particular topic there. And then the final one is income and how we can increase that. So let's go ahead and start with family and friends and how to interact with them financially. So sometimes in life, our family and friends are in a different season than we are. And the decisions that they're making financially may not sync up with what we are trying to accomplish in our own lives. And when it's with our own friends and family, it can be very difficult to tell them no. If they're asking you to spend time with them by, say, going out to eat or going on an expensive vacation or something that is similar to those kind of examples, it can be hard to tell them no and disappoint them by being the bearer of bad news, if you will. But whether it is a financial situation or even just your own personal life, leave the money out of it. It is important to learn to say no, and you shouldn't feel guilty about saying no. So I've mentioned before that I am a school teacher, and this is something in my particular career we have to learn early if we want to survive as a teacher. If you don't learn to say no as a teacher and not feel bad about it, you get burnt out very quickly. It's very important to set boundaries in your life and stick to those things when you need to. So like, for example, I really do not respond to parent emails after work hours. And the reason why I don't do that is because if I do respond, I'm going to get parent emails constantly during the evening. And yes, I do have my work email attached to my phone. I know that's a big no-no for a lot of people, but I do like to have some awareness of what I'm going to walk into the next day when I'm going into the classroom. So I will see like the headlines of the notifications, and then I'll just swipe them away to but right back to when I get back into the classroom. So that's something of an example of learning to say no and set boundaries. And it's not just teachers that need to do this. It's everybody that needs to do this, because people will take advantage of people who are people pleasers, people who always say yes to everything. When you say yes to everything, you're telling people that they can basically put anything on you, and you will do it for them, essentially turning you into kind of a servant in a way. Now, let's take a step back, because I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of saying no in your personal life. I want to go down the direction of saying no when it comes to finances. So, obviously, when people are asking you to, let's say, go on an impromptu restaurant expense or something like that, and you don't have it in the budget, it again can be hard to say no to that because it doesn't seem like a big thing, right? And you don't want to displease your family or friends by telling them no. But there are some things that you can do, and I'm going to go and bring those up now, that you can do in response to a family member or a friend requesting you to do something that is going to end up messing up your budget. So here's the first thing you could do. You could tell them no, like I've said earlier, and you shouldn't feel bad about it, but give them an explanation why. A lot of people will be a lot more understanding when you give them the bigger picture. Now, you don't need to go down a long monologue and tell them your whole life story or anything like that. Just give them a little bit of information that they can understand why you're telling them no right now. It could be as simple as, no, I'm sorry, I can't do that right now because it's not in the budget. Or, I'm sorry, I'm trying to get out of debt right now, so I can't really be spending money on coffees and restaurants or vacations or whatever it is that your friends and family are asking you to do. By giving them an understanding of what your goals are, if they're a true friend or a good family member, they will be understanding of what your goals are and try to not mess you up. Right? Like, for example, if you told them that you were dieting or doing something different besides finances, I'm sure that your friends and family would be more accommodating to you, right? They would try to work it into their schedule somehow or work it into their plan somehow so that you can still spend time with them but not compromise on these life goals that you have. Well, if that's the way that they're going to be in other areas of your life, then I'm sure they'll be that way when it comes to your finances too. And if they're not understanding, well, you can't really control what other people are doing. You need to just hold firm to your standard, hold firm to what you are trying to accomplish, and you have to be okay with people's reactions being different. You can't control other people's actions or reactions. You can only control your own. So if they're going to react negatively to you trying to accomplish a goal, financially speaking, well, that's kind of a them problem. It's not really a you problem, and there's not much you can do about it. So again, don't feel guilty about that. Here are two other things you can do that don't actually require you saying no, at least not the way that I mentioned earlier. So the next one is to say not right now. This is another thing I've learned as a teacher. Kids will come to me all the time asking to go to the bathroom, and some kids, I'm thinking in my head, boy, you have gone to the bathroom like 3 times already today. You do not need to go right now. Now, of course, I know if I tell them no, go back to your seat, some kids might respond negatively to that and then say it's in their right as an American to use the bathroom or whatever, thing that spills into their mind in that moment. I have found that it's easier to tell them, no, not right now. Or how about you get this done first and then you can go. So you can use that strategy with your family and friends too. If they're asking you to do something that's not in the budget, you can simply say, I'm sorry, I can't do that this month, but next month I think I can do that. Want to schedule a time there? Or I'm sorry, it's not in the cards right now. I'll let you know when it is. In that case, you're telling your family and friends that you are willing to participate in those things, the things that they're inviting you to do, but that you just aren't able right now. You're showing willingness, still holding to your boundaries, and hopefully not breaking a lot of feelings or hurting a lot of feelings by telling them no. So it's kind of an easier way to let them down, if you want to think of it that way. The third and final thing that you can do if you are trying to work around your family and friends inviting you to all these different things financially that may or may not be in your budget is that you can plan for it. You can make a line item in your budget that is impromptu, an impromptu fund, so that you can spend money and enjoy these things with your friends, of course, within reason. My wife and I, we always leave a little extra money left over in our budget that will just end up being saved if it's not used. But the reason why we leave that little bit of money left over is sometimes we go over in different line items that we plan out for the month, and that money is the cushion that softens that blow. So sometimes we go over in restaurants, but because we have the extra money left over, we don't have to feel as bad because that money can soften that blow. Or if we go over in groceries, same thing. we have that extra money to cover that expense. So you could do the same thing. You could set up your budget to have some sort of impromptu fund to help you say yes to some of your family and friends' requests each and every month when they are wanting to do things with you that require you to spend money. But circling back, as I wrap up this segment here, circling back to saying no, it is an important skill to learn to say no, not just financially, but in life in general. And if you are really struggling with that, then you need to practice more. Practice saying no. Start by saying no to little things, and then, work your way up from there. Because if you don't learn to say no, you are going to burn yourself out. You're going to wear yourself out. You're not going to want to help people as much in the future because you've basically been doing that your whole life and you're tired now. So you need to learn that sometimes no is the right answer to the request that is being made. And guess what? In many cases, their request will just go to another person. Yes, you said no, but that doesn't mean that everyone's going to say no. Somebody else might say yes and step in and help. It doesn't always have to be you saying yes every single time. And you shouldn't feel guilty about it. In fact, you might even be surprised when you say no for the first time. The person on the other end of the request may actually be very understanding. And then you might be surprised by the fact that, oh, that actually wasn't as bad as I was making it out to be in my mind. All right, let's go ahead and stop with that segment, and let's move on to our second segment, which is winning isn't accidental. So I was listening to a video that had Dave Ramsey in it, and he was talking about this idea that winning is not an accident. You don't accidentally win. You don't accidentally build wealth. You don't accidentally get out of debt. It is all intentional. And remember, I talked about in a different video about going from intensity to intentionality, and that we make choices each and every day that are either going to build us toward success or build us toward the opposite of success, financial ruin, or whatever it is that you're doing in life. So Dave Ramsey was talking about that, and he mentioned his millionaire survey in the video. So I want to go through his millionaire survey, and we can talk about the different things that actual net worth millionaires do that show that wealth is an intentional act. Winning financially is an intentional act. It is not an accidental one. Think about lottery winners. When people win the lottery, if they haven't built in good discipline of what to do with money, they're going to waste all that money and be broke within 5 years because they haven't learned how to win and how to demonstrate self-control. So this millionaire survey that I just mentioned a second ago, it was 10,000 people that are net worth millionaires, and they were given a series of questions, and they made answers to those questions. And here are some of the things that was found in that survey. So for example, 79% of all of these people surveyed had no inheritance at all. What does that tell us? That tells us that the vast majority of people who become net worth millionaires aren't getting it from somebody else. They're not born into wealth. They are building it. And if they're building it, then that means you can build it. But it's going to take intentional decisions on your part to get there. So here's something else that's interesting. Only 31% of these net worth millionaires actually earned over $100,000 a year. So if your first thought after telling you about the inheritance thing was, well, okay, then they're all doctors. Well, actually, the vast majority of them never made more than $100,000 a year. That's a lot of people in America right now. The vast majority of Americans do not make six figures. So that means that there's hope. The vast majority of Americans can become net worth millionaires if they make good decisions. So what are some of the good decisions that these net worth millionaires made? Well, 80%, or 8 out of every 10 of them, invested in their company's 401k. So if their company offered a 401k for retirement, they were putting money into it. So basically, all of these net worth millionaires were investing and putting money into retirement. It's probably safe to say that they were putting in 15% of their income. Now, that may seem impossible for many of us listening to this video right now, and that's probably because you have a lot of debts. If you have a lot of debts and payments, then of course it's hard to save or put money toward retirement because all your money is claimed. Before your paycheck ever hits your bank account, most of it's already claimed to all these creditors. So of course you can't pay yourself first and save because you're paying everybody else first. So you got to pay off those debts so that you can then direct more money toward retirement. What's another thing that these net worth millionaires are doing? Well, 94% of them said that they live on less than they make. Shocker. If you're spending less money than what you're making, you then have money to spend on bigger things, bigger goals, such as retirement or owning your house or paying off debt or buying other bigger, nicer things that hopefully appreciate in value. And then interestingly enough, 75% of these net worth millionaires never carried a credit card balance. So that doesn't mean that all of them didn't have credit cards. It just means that they definitely did not go beyond their limits, that they couldn't pay it off within the month that they are swiping that card. So I'm sure there are also other ones that just don't have a credit card as well. But taking all of that into account, 75% of these net worth millionaires are not allowing credit card interest to pile up and overwhelm their finances. So if you've got credit card debt, you are going in the opposite direction of what these net worth millionaires are doing that got them to where they're at today. So you got to pay off those credit cards. Maybe you need to get rid of those credit cards if you're not able to control them so that you can start making intentional acts that will get you toward becoming a net worth millionaire. Another thing that they said is that 85% of them use a shopping list. What has my wife said many times when I had her on the last one where it was talking about lowering the grocery bill? What was said? Stick to the list. My overspending tips, one of them was stick to the list. That's not just me saying it. 85% of people who are successful, they have a net worth millionaire portfolio account, finance, whatever you want to call it. They are sticking to a list as well. So if you're sticking to a list, you are making an intentional act toward building building your finances in the right direction, which is building wealth, of course. Lastly, respondents said that they spend $200 or less per month on restaurants. And that's a tough one right there. A lot of people spend a lot of money on restaurants. Just take into account the morning commute, getting breakfast or coffee. We're not even talking about the nice dinner restaurants or anything like that. It adds up very quickly. So these net worth millionaires are showing that if we can control our eating out habits, our out of control shopping habits, that we are making intentional acts toward building wealth when we do that. So if you have a big restaurant spending problem, if you would cut back on that and use that money to build toward bigger and better things like building wealth, investing it, putting it into a 401k, those sorts of things, then you could become part of this net worth millionaire club that Dave Ramsey has surveyed here. So this is where I'm going to wrap up this segment with a reminder, because I just went through all of the survey results, and you can find that on Dave Ramsey's website as well. He's got all the things. I'm sure he's got even more there that I didn't even highlight in this video. But the thing that you need to take away from this is that winning, building wealth is an intentional act. You are not going to accidentally become a net worth millionaire, because even if you won the lottery right now and you don't have these good financial habits in your life, you're going to blow it. You're going to blow all that money and you're going to be right back to where you were, which was broke. So you got to start thinking about, how can I win financially? Maybe start following what some of these successful people are doing. Instead of following people on the internet talking about Bitcoin and gold and all this other stuff, start doing what these net worth millionaires are doing, and you can start to build success too. Because again, it's not just going to come by magic. It's going to come by your choices, the choices that you make every single day. All right, we have one final segment to talk about, and then we're going to head out for this one. And this one that I'm talking about here is increasing your income. I have spent a lot of time talking about where and how to cut back in budgeting. But one thing I have not talked a lot about is the opposite side of the equation. Yes, you can cut back on your spending and make your budget lean, but there comes a point where you can't cut anymore, where there's all the juice in the lemon or whatever it is you're squeezing has been squeezed out and there's nothing left to squeeze. And when that happens, your problem isn't a spending problem anymore. Your problem is an income problem. And you need to start thinking about, okay, how can I make more money because I can't cut back anymore? So I'm going to talk about some different ways that you can increase your income. They're not going to be otherworldly, outside the box type of things. They're going to be very basic here. But I'm going to try to frame it into the lens of depending on your situation. Are you looking for an increase in income in the short term, or is this more of a long-term thing? So in the short term, if you are trying to boost your income because maybe you're trying to get a short-term goal accomplished, maybe you're paying off a debt or something like that, the quickest way to do that is to increase your work hours. So maybe your company offers overtime. Well, now it's time to start taking that. If your company does not offer that, and there's not really a way to increase your work hours at the company you're at, then you may have to consider a second job, maybe a second part-time job. Or you could go into the gig economy, look at different things that are out there, and start to get extra money in that way. Yes, it's not the ideal long-term solution, which is why I'm calling it a short-term solution, because yes, you probably don't want to be working 2 jobs for decades. And yes, you probably don't want to be doing the gig economy for decades either, especially since the gig economy usually uses your car a lot. So you'd be putting a lot more miles on your car over the span of time, and that can be a bad thing. But in the short term, if you're trying to figure out a way to create margin in your budget and there's no more fat left to cut from your budget, then this is a quick way to boost that income, create a bigger margin, and get whatever goals you're trying to accomplish done. If you're trying to think longer term and you're thinking, okay, I can't really increase my income doing a second job or a gig economy for years, what is my next alternative? Well, unfortunately, your next alternative is to go get a skill. Maybe you need to go back to school and build up a skill so that you can become more marketable, so that you can increase your income. So some ways to do that would be to either go to a trade school, to go get an associate's degree, or to go back to college and get a bachelor's degree. Or maybe if you already have a bachelor's degree, you're going to get a master's or something like that. Each one of these has a benefit to it. And so when I was doing some research on it, I found some interesting stuff. If you have only a high school diploma, you can expect, after all your working years are done, to earn about $1.6 million. Sounds like a lot, and honestly, it is a lot. But here's what you could make if you had an associate's degree. This is 2 years of college. If you had an associate's degree, on average, over the span of your life of working, you could expect to make about $2 million. About $400,000 more than the high school diploma. And if you go and get a bachelor's degree, you can expect over the span of your full working years to make about $2.8 million. So that's a lot of money too. The point I'm trying to get here is that if you go and get yourself a marketable skill, then you can expect an increase in wage. Obviously, the downside here is that many of these things are going to cost money. And we know what the rap is for student loans right now, right? Student loans are those things that you're stuck with forever and all of that. So I'm not saying that you should just go and do it and saddle up more debt, but I am saying that you need to look at your options. You need to look at your options and see what you could potentially do that would get you the skills you need to increase your wage. Now, I tried to find for trades how much they would make over the span of their life, and I couldn't find that information, unfortunately. I think it's probably closer to that associate's number that I mentioned earlier, because when I was doing a lot of research, I found that many trades also have some sort of connection with associate's degrees. So you can go and get an associate's that happens to be a trade skill, like, for example, electricians and things like that. So it's possible that that associate's earnings is similar to a tradesman's skill. But unfortunately, I couldn't find it on the internet, so I'm kind of just throwing guesses out there. And unfortunately, I can't really give you much more than that. But one of the positive things about the trades, if you're, again, thinking, well, I don't have the money to go get associates or bachelor's or whatever, then maybe the trades is your route, because a lot of times that is on-the-job training and it's counted toward hours. And once you get the hours, then you can get the certificate and all the things that go with it, with the increase, etc. But the bottom line is this. No matter what you do, if you have a high school diploma right now and you're trying to figure out how do I increase my income, because right now I can't be doing the second job and gig and all this other stuff, then I would consider going back and getting a skill, whether it's going back to school or going into the trades, but doing something to get yourself some skills so that you become more marketable, so that you can demand a higher income. So then, wrapping this up, going back to the beginning, there's only so much you can do when it comes to cutting down your budget. And if you're at that point where you can't cut any more, then you need to start thinking about it from the opposite end of the equation, which is, okay, how can I make more money so that I can create a bigger margin in my budget and feel a little bit more comfortable? If you have any thoughts about what I have talked about today, whether it is the finances with your family and friends, or winning is not accidental, or the one that I just mentioned, increasing your income, go ahead and let me know down in the comments down below. And as always, thank you for watching all the way to the end. If you haven't liked the video yet or subscribed to the channel, go ahead and do that. It helps the channel to grow and reach more people. And thank you for watching again.